What if the one thing keeping you stuck is the way you think? Welcome to Change Your Mind with Chris Ashley, the podcast where science meets spirituality and mindset becomes your most powerful tool for transformation. I'm Chris Ashley, author of Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality, trainer, speaker, and lifelong seeker. For years, I battled trauma, depression, anger, chronic illness, low self-worth, and the weight of old stories. Until I discovered how to rewire my mind, reconnect with my divine nature, and consciously create a new reality from the inside out. This show is here to help you do the same. Each week, we explore the intersection of personal development, spirituality, and science, diving into topics like healing, emotional mastery, entrepreneurship, resilience, and the quantum nature of reality. You'll hear powerful stories, gain practical tools, and real conversations that will help you change your perspective, get unshakable confidence, and live the vision your soul has always known is possible. Whether you're navigating a major life shift, building your dream business, or seeking deep healing and alignment, you're in the right place. So if you're ready to break through, take back your power, and create a life on your terms, this is your moment. Let's break free from the patterns that hold us back, awaken to who we truly are, and rise. Your transformation starts now. Change Your Mind podcast, where we explore personal development, spirituality, and science. I'm your host, Chris Ashley, and I'm really excited for my conversation today. We were just talking in the green room, and we're either going to talk spirituality, we're going to talk fitness and exercise, we're going to talk marketing, all things I love, and we're going to see where the conversation goes. So I'm really excited. But first, a couple quick announcements. Head over to the links in the show notes. You're going to find a link to my book, Change Your Mind to Change Your Reality. It was endorsed by 3 people who were in The Secret. It was endorsed by John Gray, Anita Moorjani, Bob Doyle. Check it out. And then you'll also find links for my coaching program, my courses, ways to sponsor the podcast, ways to connect on social media, ways to connect with my amazing guest, and a lot more. So become part of the conversation, stay connected in the community. And as always, this podcast is part of the Los Angeles Tribune Podcast Network. We are focused a lot on personal development. We have some amazing events pretty much every month now, whether virtual or in person, with some rock star headliners. So come be involved. All right. So with me today, I have Ryan Carter. So Ryan is the Chief Marketing Officer behind the hottest new fitness product and company called Pure Plank. The Physical Fitness Board combines ergonomic design with modern technology to optimize comfort, form, and results so that we can all work out at home with no hassles. The company was started by Adam Copeland, aka Edge, and Jay Riso, aka Christian Cage, 2 iconic and famous WWE professional entertainment wrestlers. So welcome, Ryan. I'm happy you're here.
Hey, thanks for having me. Excited.
Yeah, absolutely. So I always start all of my conversations the same way. And that is by asking my guests what their origin story is. And it's a little interesting because you're here representing a company, which I don't have too often. So I'm going to let you just kind of choose your own adventure when it comes to your origin story. If you want to talk about, I know you said you're big into spirituality and alternative health. If you want to talk about your origin story with that or just with marketing, I leave it up to you.
Yeah, how far back into the origin do you want to go?
Whatever's relevant. Yeah, whatever you feel called to share.
Yeah, so whatever is relevant. So I actually migrated to the US when I was a kid. So I was like born in Guyana, which is technically in South America, but its culture is out of the Caribbean. So think Trinidad, 45 minutes from Trinidad, all that good stuff. And I was literally born by a river, so very humble beginnings, and just from very on, just having to navigate and figure out how to make do with a little. Even when we migrated to the U.S., my parents, trying to make their best, grew up in Miami. It was always kind of in me to create and to express myself through various, avenues. So I was really, still am, but at one point in my life, I thought like I'm gonna make it by being a musician, specifically a rapper, and I was like locked in, focused on that. Love music, grew up in a musical household, and yeah, and always, that spirit of creativity is kind of always there and always fostered also, in the home and in the community at large. And as I grew and went on and started a career, naturally just kind of gravitated to branding, and I started my own agency, Scarlet Row, about 5 or 6 years ago, and we helped to develop and launch medium and well-funded brands that either wanted to, again, launch into the market or reposition themselves and so on and so forth. So we did branding and a bunch of other things within that space, and through that process got connected with the founders of Pure Plank very early on, and immediately saw the impact that it could have on people, and just kind of helped out and helping turn into something more frequent. And from there just kind of went full in the last 3 years of helping to develop and bring the product to market. So it's been a great and amazing ride. We're building something awesome, I believe, and the Pure Plank specifically is just the start of what I hope and I believe will be a very impactful way to help people at large.
That's cool. So do you still have your own agency, or have you moved over totally to just growing this with them?
Yeah, I still have my own agency also. Working sort of less there in certain capacities, but the infrastructure is there, and yeah, I still oversee most of the projects. But day to day, I'm also wearing many hats in Pure Plank as we grow. So it's been exciting and cool.
That's really cool. I mean, that's what's great about owning a company, right? Once you have the infrastructure in place and you have people you trust, you can kind of, be a little bit more hands off to work on other projects that you feel passionate about. Yeah. So are they still in a startup phase then? And because you said you're wearing a lot of hats, and I don't know if you know this about me, but my background is in marketing, and I was a CMO in a startup. So I know like the multiple hats. You said that, and I was like, "Ooh, that sounds like startup grind."
Yeah. No, absolutely, 100%. We're bootstrap. We're startup. We're feisty. We officially we're in development for about 3 years. Hiccups with COVID and everything else, and supplier chains and stuff like that. But we just launched, say, top of 2024, first quarter, and the market has responded amazingly, kind of validating what we believe to be true. Just making health and fitness accessible to people and easy, and sort of starting with a foundation that you can build on. And that's kind of what we've been doing. And so far it's been amazing, and excited to see the next phase. 2024 was good. 2025 has all the indications of being better and reaching more and more people. So it's really cool. And just in my role, I'm one-to-one with the customers. I'm overseeing and touching every part of the business because we are in startup mode, and just being able to see the feedback and the comments that people are leaving, like it's every day. It's like amazing, highs and lows, but for the most part, the feedback has been amazing and motivating.
Yeah, I mean, that's what keeps you going, right? When you've got like those like really great fans. So thanks for that. I want to talk to you a little bit about like building your own company, because you said you came from nothing. You were born by a river, which is like such a cool origin story in itself. And that's powerful. You ended up starting your own company. So what was that journey like? Like, how did you because we have a lot of listeners who are entrepreneurs or want to start their own businesses. And sometimes people are really afraid to take that first step. So I'd love to just hear a little bit about what that journey was like for you.
Yeah, the journey was and is still ongoing. It was very challenging, to say the least. But I think with the important thing, like people say, you ask 1,000 people, you get 1,000 different answers sometimes, right?
Sure.
And depending on where you're at or what your tolerance is for taking risk, right? It may look different, but I always say like it has to be balanced. Your purpose and your passion and also profit kind of have to convene, right? Because as an artist first, right? I'll take, for example, like when I was doing music and that was all I was focused on, turning that sort of art into a career is not easy, right? It's a lot easier to sell something for sure, right? Like there's enough people in the world that you can always find a market. But that said, I was one of those guys where I would make music for free, right? So if I could just figure out how to get paid, I would have been good. So I think that sort of experience kind of opened my eyes to what balance really means as an entrepreneur. I've had many failures, more failures than wins, to be honest. But inside of that, there are valuable lessons. You're always learning something, and once you're aware and you're catching those gems, then you should be able to take the right next step. So anyone that might be listening and afraid to take the steps, definitely validate, right? Like that's important because it's so easy to launch something and to bring something out of your mind into the world doesn't mean that failure is any less, or challenges are going to be any different than back in the day, right? So always find a way to validate, right? Like, okay, you have a good idea, it's good for you. Now validate it. Is it good for someone else, right? Where's your market? Where's that fit? And there's a ton of ways to do that. It doesn't cost any money. There's very easy ways to validate an idea, and then look at like the next logical steps and where are you going to basically exist, right? Which a lot of people, I think, when they're launching brands and companies, they don't necessarily think about distribution. For example, like in doing branding, like a lot of people would come to us and they'll be like locked in, like, this is our name. And, sometimes they'll have a name, and that's not always the best route, right? Like sometimes a product should name itself, right? In a lot of ways, because it allows you to kind of get out of the way. So with branding, that's just kind of one aspect. But a lot of times I tell people to focus on distribution first. Distribution in the sense, like, where are you meeting people? Where do they live? How are you going to sell? What's the mechanism there, right? Like, is it on a marketplace? Like a brand that lives on Amazon is completely different from a brand that lives on a website, right? Like they're two different things. Like the guy that owns his own Shopify store, for example, he owns those customers, or he has a direct relationship and a loop with those customers, not so much with Amazon, right? Those are Amazon customers. That said, you can quickly launch and scale and do amazing on Amazon, right? So there's pros and cons to everything. But yeah, definitely validate, and then from there, sort of figure out where you're going to exist. But definitely take the leap, because I'm not sure there's any other time in history that what's happening now has happened before, where you can literally do anything, and it's now or never, right? Like when my kids are my age, I'm not sure how the world's going to look, but right now you can do, the world is flat. The internet made the world flat. So it's only right that people take advantage, and we need more ideas. We need more creators out in the space doing their thing.
Yeah, totally. I love everything you just shared, especially the part about how you've had more failures than successes. And I think so, I saw a stat the other day that was like 90% of people don't achieve their dreams, either because the first time something doesn't work out, they get discouraged and quit, or they're so afraid to start that they don't even like begin in the first place. So how do you overcome failures? Like, what's your mindset around that? Because a lot of people can get really discouraged.
Yeah. So that's a great question. How do you overcome failure? So you have to, self-belief has to be there, right? You have to believe, even if you don't have proof or evidence of how it's going to work, how it's going to end up, the belief has to be there, right? The discipline has to be there, because discipline should always be like your baseline, right? Like I tell people, like, motivation is fleeting, right? So you can't chase motivation, because some days it's there, some days it's not. But if you're disciplined, then the work, the journey, you stay the course, guaranteed something would happen, even when you get setbacks, right? So I like to tell this to my son. He's in travel soccer now. He's 9. He's doing his thing. So the other day we were talking, and I was telling him about, the road to becoming a professional soccer player, right? And trying to put it in context for his 9-year-old mind. And, I explained to him that, like, you're going to get knocked down, you're going to fail, you're not going to make a team, you're not going to play as much. But in those moments, you get a chance to figure out why, right? Like,
Mm.
what happened, versus if you go out there and you win on your first try, right? Yes, you made a shot. Yes, you scored a goal. Or in business, yes, you had a great first product, no hitches, no hiccups, good. But there's the other side of the moon, where a lot of that value and a lot of things that are going to take you to the level that you want to be at actually exist in the failures, right? So when failure comes, when disappointment happens, once you have a strong belief and discipline, I think that's like a sure shot way to overcome. You got to believe and you got to be disciplined, right? Like this is now, this is not forever type of attitude.
I like that. Motivation is fleeting, but like discipline will carry you through. So did you kind of just were you just kind of like, okay, here's like a next step I can take, and then it's like, okay, and here's a step I can take after that? Or did you kind of map the whole thing out? I guess what I'm asking is like, did you have the whole journey in mind, or were you just like, okay, here's what I can do right now with the tools I have, and I'm going to take that step, and then I'm going to take the next one? Like, which kind of path did you take?
Yeah, that's also a good question. Are you asking specifically with Pure Plank or
No, with your own thing.
my own thing? Yeah. So it was my validation was just it happened. I got COVID to thank, honestly. Like that's when it really, really kicked into gear, because what happened was I was always getting told like, yo, you're really creative. Like that's awesome. You got an eye for stuff. You're so creative. And I get that, like, you know, always love consuming art and music and all that stuff. But I didn't realize the power of putting names to things, right? And COVID had me stuck in the house, couldn't do anything, really started researching stuff and realized that what I've been doing since I was like, you know, 13, there was like a name for this thing. And once you can name something, it kind of shines a light on it where you can see it and understand it a lot better, right? And in my case, you know, understanding what, you know, having a creative studio meant, right? What branding actually meant, what marketing meant, right? It made me think back to when I would do music and or my friends, and we would make our mixtapes or our albums or whatever the case is, and we'll do our track list, and every song had a specific title that had a specific meaning, and you know it told this bigger story. Like there's people that get paid big bucks in Hollywood to do the same thing, right? So, but what is that career? What is that thing called, right? So, yeah, that for me was sort of like an aha moment, like being able to name things and understand, you know, how they function, um, and then also I would say I knew what I wanted to do, so I just kind of looked at other people that were successful, and you know success always leaves crumbs, so I just kind of looked at like who's the top of the field. I didn't know their names at the time. I just started googling and looking and saying like, okay, who's at the top of the mountain here, and then just started reverse engineering that, right? And started doing a bunch of work for free and a bunch of spec work and just working my way up and doing my thing. And then from there, you know, just kind of found a rhythm, and it was kind of off to the races. So yeah, I would say just looking at people that came before me and what they did and didn't do, and then also naming things, like understanding what it is that I want to do, right? So even if not literally, just putting a name to things, but oftentimes quite literally.
Yeah, I think that's so smart of looking at who's already walked that path and had success in it, right? Not just like is just talking about it online, but who's actually done that thing, because there's no need to reinvent the wheel, right? Like if there's something that works and you can figure it out, that's why mentors are so great too, but it's like you just kind of figured it out on your own by watching all of these other people. And I think that's so important. And there's this flip side to it too. We were talking about people being intimidated with the gym. I think there's also this flip side of people being like, oh, wait, I'm researching and there's all these people who have done the damn thing already. So like, why should I do it too? Right? Like, who
Right.
am I to like add it if like all these people are already successful? So did you ever come across that in your mind, or like what's your advice to people thinking that?
Yeah, you got to find a why, man. Like, you know, it, people don't buy products, right? They buy stories.
Mm,
You know, human brain is wired to understand stories. We're not necessarily wired to understand spreadsheets, right? Like it's storytelling. That's been the human, you know, the thread through every human civilization, right? Like
yeah.
history is just a compilation of stories, right? Sometimes factual, sometimes not. But yeah, I would say definitely finding the why early and understanding, and to your point, like when that question comes up and it's like, why me? Like, yeah, why you? Why? Let's unpack that. Why? Is it because you have a story, you've been through this, you understand why and what's happening and why this would help someone? You know, are you agent zero? Are you the customer? Is it you're motivated because, you know, you want to make some money? You know, like why? Like why you? Like and really understanding and sitting with that and answering those questions, I think can be powerful and definitely kind of help you see the path. But yeah, the why, you gotta figure that out for sure.
I love that advice. And I also think it's like figure out your why too. Like, why are you doing this? Are you doing it because, like you said, like, is it just because you want money? Because it money is just like a symbol, right? Like, it's like, what do
Mhm.
you really want, right? Do you want like a better life for your kids, or do you want to make the world a better place? I feel like that kind of like that kind of motivation isn't fleeting, right? When you like can
Right.
really have like a solid reason as to why you're doing something.
And being
So
honest too, right? Like it's really hard for all of us to be honest with ourselves, right? We are the one person you can't BS, right? So for me, like I explored alternative medicines, and it got to a point where um, I thought I understood certain things about myself and my experiences, and I got like put onto something else, and now my awareness and the way I process things have completely changed, right? And I can look back and say like, okay, yeah, for a long time, it was very hard for me to be honest with myself, right? And if we can't be honest with ourselves, it's going to be hard to convince anyone else, right, of what we're doing with any sort of sincerity.
when you can we unpack that a little? When you say you tried alternative medicines, are you trying? What do you mean?
Um, Plant medicine, right?
Okay,
So,
that's what I thought you were saying.
yeah,
So yeah, tell me a little bit about that.
a mentor of mine who was kind of one of the first guys that showed me like true success, right? So, I grew up in the inner city in Miami, and it's like you rap or you play ball, or you hustle, you know, whatever. And for a time, I thought that's what I was going to be, right? That's how I was going to make it out. And I met this guy, and he was close in age, and he had a business, and he was building it. And I kind of crunched the numbers. I was, you know, watching his pockets a little bit. I'm like, okay, it's probably a millionaire, you know, and just seeing him show up every day, work, put in the work, discipline, you know, seeing it through. And he has, you know, the success to show for it. And that turned into a sort of like a lifelong relationship. And for a while, like he went off and he tried it, and he was like, "It's crazy!" Like, you know, completely changed my life and how I see things, rewired my brain. But I kind of just kept, nah, it's a little outside of my comfort zone, I guess. Like, yeah, I'm not going to do that. Like, I'll leave that for you. And he just kept going and kept going. But he is like someone that's really, really important in my life. Like, I trust him, go to war for him. So finally, I caved and I said, okay, I'm going to try it. And he introduced me um, to someone that was doing like psilocybin mushrooms and that type of stuff. And I had my first ceremony, and almost immediately my brain got rewired, right? Like, so from there, it went to ayahuasca. It went to a few other type of medicines also, and every experience has been just amazing. And the takeaway is like for me, like when I'm not sure how into this your audience is, or even you, but like you hear people in this space talk about the power of a plant medicine like ayahuasca, for example, and how it can essentially rewire those neurological links in our brain. 100% happened with me. I can't point to anything else in my life that has impacted me as much as this thing has for the better. You know, and from there, my wife is, she got into it, impacted her, people around me, so on and so forth. And that's the beauty of it, right? It kind of sort of spreads, um, but with the right intention, right? So yeah, for me, it's been a game changer. The single most important thing that I've done in my life, 100%.
I've heard so many people say that, and so I actually have I mentioned like very briefly, I have a television show as well, and we really dive deep into like a lot of metaphysical stuff. Like I have people on who remember their past lives or have had near-death
Yeah.
experiences, but I'm also had a lot of people on who either run ceremonies or like, had like even spiritual gifts open up from them.
Yeah.
So, I I mean, if you're comfortable talking about it, like I'd love to hear a little bit about like well, I mean, okay, you said it rewired your brain. Like, what do you mean by that? Like, what does that feel like? I guess is where we start.
Yeah. So, practically speaking, my level of awareness has just completely changed. Um, it is impossible for me not to see the good in a situation now.
That's so
And I'm
cool.
not just saying that sort of like tongue in cheek, like cool, like hands together. It's just I can't, like I cannot. If something is happening, someone like my brain automatically goes to, but why? Right? Like so, for example, if at one point I had a client, I've never shared this before, but I had a client that was sort of a pain in the butt, but um compensation was really good, right? So I kind of put up with it. And then I kind of like put certain measures in place where I didn't have to deal with the client as much, right? So at that point, it was like, I love this. Like this is great. And then they called me out of the blue one day, and they're like, yeah, we're gonna have to like part ways, which happens in my line of work, but completely unexpected, and was kind of like not depending, but like you know that revenue stream was good, and I was like, all right, this is gonna last for a while.
Yeah.
And yeah, just day over day it just disappeared, right? Something happened on their end and they just couldn't do it anymore. In that moment, my wife came to me and she's like, oh man, I'm sorry, how do you feel? She was a bit anxious. She's like, how is this going to change things? Like, what are we going to do? Because your lifestyle changes sometimes depending on how much money you make and all this stuff. And I'm like, I don't know, but like, thank God I had them for as long as I did. Look what
Yeah.
they provided. Like, they helped buy me a house, right? So from here, it's just a bonus, right? Like, things like that, or with friends that deal with challenges, right? Like, we're talking about stuff and whatever the case is. Yeah, it's just hard for me not to see things half full, and someone asked me like, how are you able to do that? Like, how are you able to see the good in everything, or the positive? And I tell them like, I just believe to, right? Because every day we're making a choice, right? Whether we know it or not, like you're making a choice every day. You're negotiating with yourself every second. So why not make a choice that's positive, right? That's for the better. That's going to make you feel a bit more encouraged to continue and keep pushing on. So yeah, that's something that's been really powerful, and also helping in healing the relationship with my parents, right? Like
Mm.
plant medicine, specifically after going through a few ayahuasca ceremonies. They call her mama, right? Because she has like this female energy, and she kind of showed me what the anger that I held for a long time against my parents, um, for just numerous reasons. I never at any point considered their side, right?
Mm.
In a very powerful, very real way, the medicine showed me like their version of events. And
Wow.
I came out of it like, oh man, like, okay, okay. Because I was there, but I experienced it from my side, right? Like
Yeah.
missing my dad for whatever reason or whatever. I'm like, okay, that's my version of it. But what happened on his side, right? And getting to understand that, or my mom, the sacrifices that she's made, it just kind of like blew my mind. And that kind of opened the path to communicating and working towards healing. Still a work in progress to some degree, but that doesn't happen without ayahuasca, in my opinion.
That's really cool. I get goosebumps actually. Thank you for sharing all of that. I knew we were going to end up in like a really cool conversation here. So I love the like looking at everything half full. I'm totally the same way. I'm like, well, wait, but like there's a lesson in that, and there's a way that you can grow out of that. And it, it's funny. My husband right now is in the process of putting in his resignation at a company. He's the president, because it's gone in a bad place, and he's starting his own thing, and like he's excited, but he has all these fears. I'm like, no, this is amazing. It's
Right,
like
right.
everything you wanted, and he's like, oh my god, how am I going to provide? But it's like you just don't have a doubt that it's going to work out.
Yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna read you this because I feel like you'll appreciate it. I sent him this the other day. So it's my favorite quote ever, and it's by Terrence McKenna, which is why I think you're gonna like it. You know who Terrence McKenna is, right?
I heard him. Yeah.
Okay, um he's like the plant medicine like guy. Like he wrote like all these books. He went on like he like went into the jungle and like ate mushrooms for like ever, and like he wrote like all, he's like very famous. But listen to how cool this quote is, and I feel like you'll appreciate it. Okay. Nature loves courage. You make the commitment, and nature will respond to that commitment by removing impossible obstacles. Dream the impossible dream, and the world will not grind you under. It will lift you up. This is the trick. This is what all these teachers and philosophers who really counted, who really touched the alchemical gold, this is what they understood. This is the shamanic dance in the waterfall. This is how magic is done. By hurling yourself into the abyss and discovering it's a feather bed. Isn't that
Mm,
so cool? I love that so much, but you just made me think of it. So, okay, so going
amazing.
back to the glass half full mentality, do you find that like when people are complaining to you about like their everyday just existence, not like venting about like a serious thing, but just like have that kind of negative mentality, like how do you deal with it? Are you like, I just want to be compassionate and help them, or is it like hard for you to get back to that place of understanding now that you can see things from like more of that like eagle eye view?
Yeah. I mean, a lot of the times it's we aren't even speaking from our true selves, right? In a lot of ways, it's a lot of times it's the ego that's oftentimes trying to protect us, right? Like that's kind of what it's designed to do. So because I've been there, I'm able to recognize and empathize with that, right? Depends on who's it coming from, right? I got my tolerance varies, right? So um, a stranger off the street might not get the same amount of uh, understanding when they get to complaining about something that's obviously like a first world problem, for example, right? Like I grew up in a third world country, for example, right? So what am I complaining about, right? When I don't know, the light goes out for 30 seconds. I don't know, right? Or the internet is down, right? Like, but to your question, how do I deal with it? Definitely, you have to empathize, right? And you have to. I have certain like practices, I guess, mechanisms I have for myself. I'm a Taurus. I'm stubborn. Sometimes I just want to say my piece. So, counting backwards from 10, taking a deep breath, right? And the shaman that I've worked with profoundly made me understand the power of breath, right? Like it's always happening. It doesn't matter what's happening, what you're doing, where you're at, what you're going through. I guarantee you, take a breath. And it fixes or it helps adjust everything, right? You're in pain, take a breath, right? Like if you're stressed out, take a breath. If you're frustrated, take a breath. If you're lost, take a breath, right? Um, it is literally life, right? Um, being created like that in and out. It's life happening in real time. So, when I feel a little bit like full, like I can't kind of deal with the complaining or someone carrying on about whatever. Those are a few things I do. Count backwards from 10, take a breath. But also definitely emphasize with people, right? Like I understand, like I get it. Like our situations are our situations, right? Um, like when I was younger, for example, and I also understand programming, right? Like we all go through life with these programs that were installed, whatever age, usually young, that
Totally.
turn into who we are as people, but it may not be who we actually are on the inside, right? Like someone may be angry or quick to anger, and they think like, oh, I just have an anger problem. Maybe not though, right? Maybe there's certain conditions and certain programming that happening, right? Like, so like when I was younger, for example, and again, growing up in the inner city, I always looked at people that have a certain way, right? Like rich people, rich folks, wealthy people, almost like, like don't like wealthy people, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
now that I'm older and I'm not wealthy, I'm not a rich guy by any means, but now that I'm older, understanding what my kids have versus what I have, something like privilege, the definition and the understanding of it is completely changed for me, right? Where I looked at privilege as like your cup overfloweth, right? Or you may look a certain way or whatever the case is. But now you ask me, my kids are 1000% privileged because they grew up with 100 times more than I did, right? So how is that not privilege, right? If they have that. So yeah, kind of going on here, but yeah.
No, I think it's super interesting what you're saying, and I'm glad you went on because so I have some follow-up questions. So, you kind of said you were spiritually minded in the beginning, and I can tell you are from everything. And there's this idea that like we're all one, right? And we're all connected, and everyone is just a reflection of you, right? And anyone that triggers you is there to show you what you need healing. And then we also live in this world which I feel like it's starting to get better. Like I feel like we've reached a tipping point, but there's been so much frickin' division, right?
Right.
Like so much division where it's almost like it almost feels like we're being like pitted against each other, and most people don't really feel that way just by media or whatever. Um, so how do you, and I'm just asking you this, you made me think of it because you were talking about like first world problems and privilege.
Yeah, yeah.
So how do you like reconcile all of that? Because a lot of us that are on these spiritual journeys, it's like we know things profoundly, but then like we still live on 3D Earth, and it's still like really you're bitching about the internet being down. Like,
Right,
there's still that.
right,
So
right.
like I'd love to just hear how you kind of navigate it all.
I mean, for me, like just ground rules, like understood, and honestly, through my experience with spirituality and growing in that over the years, but the media is your number one enemy. I
Yeah.
don't care who you subscribe to. I don't care
Yes.
where you get your information from. That is the culprit in 99.9% of the situations, right? Um, they will tell you the world is ending outside. I think back to COVID, during COVID, it was something new for everyone. And all we had was the news, right? And for whatever reason, like my wife would watch the news, she'd become really super anxious after she watched the news. And then I said, you know what, like let's cut the news. Like, and we actually got into like a disagreement about it. Like, she was like, how are we gonna stay? And I told her, I said, yo, whatever we need to know, we're gonna know. There's no way that we're in this state and there's like something that is actually gonna affect our lives or that we really need to know that we're not gonna know. Even if it's your mom calling you to tell you, like, hey, we're gonna find out. And then that was like a game changer. Like her anxiety and her stress levels dropped. Like we were able to communicate better just in our own relationship, and that carried on. So there's no like we don't watch news in my house. Like no Fox, no CNN, no nothing. Because what are you telling me, right? And I think back because I actually have a friend that works in me, and no knock to anyone in that profession or that career, right? Like I have a really good friend who's a reporter here in Miami, and it's funny because him and I are like really cool, but that specific channel that he works for, that station that he works for, they're the ones that'll tell you like the world is on fire. Do not go to Miami. Do not leave your house. You're gonna die.
So he
Right.
works for CNN. No, I'm just kidding.
Right. And it's like you think about it and it's like one, like you'd be terrified of any black people living in Miami, like if you watch this particular station and like you don't want to go outside, but that's not the truth. That's not the actuality, right?
Yeah.
And you just got to know where, and you have to keep in mind, I should say, to always have the gates on, right? Like the gates in front of the doors. Watch the doors, your eyes, your ears, your mouth. Like be careful and be intentional with what you consume. Um, and especially if you have kids, right? And yeah, I think just that is a ground rule for me changed a lot. So like just understanding the media and what they're actually here for and how that works. And then as far as the division part goes, um, I think about it sometimes and I ask myself, is it worse now or are we just more connected now? So division just kind of hits differently now, right? Um, Ultimately, I think it's kind of the same thing. It just it's going to change from one generation to the other, but I think it's the ultimate battle, for lack of a better phrase. It's always going to be between the have and the have-nots. I think that's kind of what it comes down to. The ones that have versus the ones that don't have. And that stretches across everything. So like I tell my buddies when we have these conversations, these kind of like more spiritual, I tell them like my belief is that like everything that we're going is not of this world. It's not physical,
Yeah.
spiritual, everything else that happens, right? Like I believe that if you, as soon as you ask for something, the universe responds immediately.
Yeah.
You may not receive or feel it immediately, but I believe the response is immediate. And 6 months down the road, something happens, and I'm sure if you take a second, you can like trace it back to when you asked for it. So I'm very intentional with what I ask for, right? I try to make sure my house is like that. Like, let's be careful what we say, let's be careful what we ask for. And I think people also need to kind of understand that we're kind of all being played, right?
Yeah.
Like the programming is working masterfully, but everything you need to know is inside of you. You don't need anything else. And those that seek to divide us, it's because they understand what happens if we're connected. So to your point
Yes.
about trend, yeah, they understand it, right? Like
Yeah.
they understand it, and we just, we're just going. And yeah, to your point about, the comment that I made earlier about like gut health and all that stuff trending. Um, I love it. Someone came to me and they're like, is, like plant medicine is sort of like on the cusp, on the line, like it's getting more and more accepted, but some of the stuff is looked as taboo still, right? Tripping out or hallucinating, whatever the case is, right? Um, False worshiping, idol work, all these things, right? Depending on who you ask. But I love that more people are talking about it because I believe that is the perfect plan, right? Like, imagine if we stop talking about all the toxic shit that happened. Imagine if we start talking about like our similarities and the beauty in our differences, and that becomes par for the course, and everyone can show up authentically. Then it's a game changer. So um, it's a good thing. Like I'd rather that trend than whatever else that might be more destructive to community, but or society. So I think, yeah, I think the people that know they understand the power in division, and we just got to be a bit more smart about it. And that often happens with what we consume, and more importantly, what we don't consume.
Yeah, that's so beautifully said. And it's like that saying, like the five people you spend the most time around influence you the most. Well, like same with like what you read, what you look at, like social media. Like you can you can tailor your feed to be like positive people and news and like great articles and inspirational stuff, or you can follow news websites, right, and live in fear. And it's all a choice. And I see my video is frozen, but it seems like you can hear me.
Yeah.
um and it's all a choice, and we get to decide how we live this life. And I love to say it like we create our own reality. And some people get really defensive about that, but I have the same beliefs that you do, that like when you ask the universe for something and you take steps towards it and you
Right.
surrender the how, like that comes into your reality. And rather than be defensive and be like, well, how can I create my reality when all these terrible things have happened? It's like you can be empowered to, like, it's like you said earlier, like we live in this day and age where like the internet, like anyone can do anything.
Yeah.
Right. And it's a pretty incredible time to be alive. And then, like you said, now our kids are going to be like in the age of AI and stuff. So I don't even know what that's going to look like.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Yeah.
um,
Yeah. No, it's
no, yeah.
crazy. Like the world every day is conspiring for you to win. and
Yeah.
choice is really important, man. And like I think it's
Yeah.
it's like overstated and misunderstood, but it's like choice is very because you're making it, it's happening. Whether you decide to like accept it for what it actually is, like it's happening. Like your fear of not doing something is a choice you made.
Yeah.
It's a choice you made, right?
Totally.
So you're kind of understanding your power and like you said, like standing inside of that, like it's a choice. So for when I look at it that way, it kind of makes things almost a no-brainer for me. Like now I'm always gonna choose like positivity. I'm always gonna choose like stepping into that, right? And like I'm reading this book now. I forget the author's name, but it's called um, Frames of Mind, right? Which it talks about like intelligence and different types of intelligence beyond like academia. And I picked it up now because I have kids, right? And my daughter and my son are like two completely different kids. One's like really into like books and stuff. The other one is not. And the author talks about essentially like 9 forms of intelligence, right? Like you being able to walk into a room and read the room and pick up on people's vibes, like that's a form of intelligence.
Totally.
Right? The athlete has a form of intelligence where they can do certain things with their bodies in certain ways, right? That's a form of intelligence. The artist that's able to not only understand but create music. You think of child prodigies, right? Kids that are on the spectrum, like being able to be amazing artists and create music and things like that. That's a form of intelligence, right? And he goes through it. So I'm just started reading it, but it's been a very interesting read. And forget the point I was making there, but yeah, make a choice, man. Make a choice and stand by it.
Yeah. I love that. And you mentioned fear, and I think that that's another thing the media does too, and another thing that we can get like so wrapped up in, but it's all an illusion,
For
right?
sure.
Like fear is an illusion. Like you said, like we're we're like spiritual beings here, and this tangible reality isn't really what's going on, right? It's
Right.
all kind of an illusion. So you mentioned kids on the spectrum. This is so not related, but have you listened to that new podcast called the Telepathy Tapes yet?
No.
Oh my
Okay,
god,
gotta
dude.
check it
Okay.
out.
So it's so freaking cool. There's 10 episodes, and it's about these non-verbal kids
Mhm.
with autism, and they realize that they all have telepathy,
Mm.
and they can all connect. They all talk. They go to this place called the Hill that's like on another dimension, and they all talk to each other, and they can see like spirits and everything. And it's run with like a neuroscientist, and they run like actual like legit scientific studies. And it just will like change your view of not just autism but like consciousness.
Right, right. Yeah, that's amazing. I gotta check it out. The telepathy tapes. I definitely gotta check
Yeah.
them out. Yeah, it's so much, and it's so much we don't know, right? Like so much we don't understand. And to your point about fear being an illusion, like yeah, 100%. Someone said that fear is living in the future and anxiety is living in the past, right? So it's like
Mm.
your best place to be is kind of present. And I've seen that in people, right? Like when you think about what you're afraid of, it's usually about something that hasn't happened yet, right? And may never happen, right?
Totally.
And when you're stressed out and you're anxious, it's usually about something you can't change anyway, right? So just being present and that's easier said than done in a time and age where it feels like almost everything is meant and designed to distract you or pull you away, right? So it's definitely easier said than done. But again, just being intentional and being, um, specific in how you want to show up every day. And by no means that means I'm not saying you're going to be perfect, or I'm not saying like be this Gandhi-esque type of person, but like small steps. So for me, like I go through the same stuff every day. I'm a father. I run a business. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm always thinking of the next thing and all that. But there's certain things that are almost non-negotiable now, right? Like I'm not gonna look as failure as defeat, right? Like I'm I'm aware and I recognize my awareness and I'm grateful, right? So I open my eyes, I come back to consciousness. I do not get up without saying 3 things I'm grateful for today, right?
Nice.
And that just sets a tone for me. And um, without getting too much into it, it's like how you start your day, it kind of propels you and like kind of compounds, and then it becomes a practice, and the practice becomes a habit, and so on and so forth, right? So, I've put my kids onto it. They come in the room, we all kind of sit around like, what are you grateful for? And it can be any and everything, right? Like, you know, 2 mornings ago, one of the things I said that I was grateful for was my eyesight, my vision, because I get to wake up and see my kids every day, right?
Aw.
Like, so, it could be grateful for opportunity and thing on, yeah, but I think every day just being intentional and just being present and just recognize that, it's half full. Like it could be worse. There's no scenario where it cannot be worse, right?
Totally.
Um, Ultimately until you seek success, right? So, I was talking to a friend the other day, and while we were on the phone, he said something happened, I forget. Um, and then he was complaining, he's like in a tough spot. He was complaining about something else, like his career. And oh, that's what happened. Like, I guess some guy jumped his lane and almost like hit his car while he was driving, and he's on the phone, and he's like, oh man, that was crazy. And then he went on and he was complaining about like, kind of feeling stuck and not being in his career. And like immediately I told him like, God forbid, but the guy that jumped the lane, that in that moment could end it a lot differently. So you're hearing now like could be worse. It could be
Totally.
worse. And then like the matter of makes me think about progress too, right? Like in how we kind of gauge progress and how we look at success, right? And oftentimes, like people look at the end goal, like success, and progress looks like a clear path to that success, right?
Right. Like that perfect, like uphill. Yeah.
Yeah. But anyone that's been in the trenches, that's built anything, you understand like there's up and down, right? Um, but you got to zoom out, right? And then when you zoom out, and you get to see everything. The same buddy of mine, he was talking, and he was, again stuck, and he was like, I want to do this, I want to do that, I don't know. And I say, I go to him, I said, when did you buy your house? And he's like, oh, I bought it like towards the end of last year. I'm like, did you have a house before last year? And he's like, nah. And he has like a couple of kids and stuff. I'm like, that sounds like progress to me, bro. Like I
Yeah.
know you want to do all this stuff, but just take your time, right? And a lot of like progress is like contractions, right? It's in and it's out, it's in and it's out. It expands and it contracts. And then when you zoom out, which a lot of us forget to do, I think today, a lot of us forget to zoom out. I stress that in my household. You got to zoom out. Like, okay, right now, this moment feels like this, but zoom out. Great day yesterday. This will pass. Tomorrow is on to something else, or whatever the case might be, right? But it's important to zoom out sometimes and take a breath, breathe.
That's such beautiful advice. And it reminds me of that like little cartoon that I'm sure you've seen where it's like the guy is mining for gold and he's like an inch away from getting it and then gives up. It's
Yeah.
like, but wait, look at all the progress you've made. And like it's right there,
Right.
right? That thing you asked for. Um, yeah, this has been such a wonderful conversation.
For sure.
I appreciate you, and that's as much as we there's cons to social media and to the internet. It's amazing that two people who live on opposite ends of the country whose worlds probably wouldn't have crossed could get
Right.
together and have an amazing conversation. So I appreciate you so much. I appreciate your time and just all the sage wisdom you dropped today. If you want to
Hope I
just
don't
take a
bore people to
moment.
death.
I know, right? um yeah, because that's the thing, it's like we have so much more in common than we don't, right?
Yeah,
We're all here
sure,
having this like crazy human experience, right? Like
sure.
it's wild. But yeah, if you want to take a moment and just let people know, I mean, usually I say like how they can find you or connect with you, but if you want to plug the Pure Plank or whatever you want to
Yeah, so the product we talked about, Pure Plank, you can check out our website, gopureplank.com. Um, and that will definitely get you started on your fitness journey. Again, we aim to make fitness accessible and effective for everyone by just sort of focusing and redefining core strength. Um, and you can find me specifically. I'm on Instagram. It's Carter like Jimmy. I don't post too much on there, But yeah, you can find me on there. I got to get into, like, people keep telling me like you need to make more content, like you need to like build your personal brand and all that stuff. And I've done it for other people, but usually like the painter's house is the last one to get painted type of thing. But yeah, check me out on Instagram, Carter like Jimmy, exactly how that sounds. And my agency, Scarlet Row. You can check us out at scarletrow.com. And this has been truly a pleasure. Not necessarily what I expected, but certainly appreciated.
Yeah, no, the pleasure's all mine. And you should build that personal brand because you've got a lot to share with the world. And, I think people are going to really love this conversation, and I think it's going to touch a lot of people and help a lot of people. So I think you have more of that in you. So go share. And if you're listening to this, also share it with someone you think might find it useful. Like, comment, share, subscribe, all the things. Let's help raise the consciousness of this planet. Thank you so much, Ryan. Thank you so much, everyone listening. I'll see you next week. Have a great rest of your day.